or sorry, D. And then we can have our 10th, our F way up there, all right? So these are our consonants options. And notice, here we've got a perfect unison, so that would be okay, both are consonant. And here we would have a third, which would be good. Here it's a fourth, that's no good, so you're out. And then here, this D technically would be a sixth, so that would be okay, but we already have a D, so probably not. So let's go with one of these, and we could pop up for the F here. I say we jump down to A, all right? I think that's our best option. So we go down to A. So this is a fifth between D and A. And then we hold on to the A. And even though it's popping up a third, it's going to be 5 to 3, which even though it's not a suspension, is consonant in its suspended state. All right, does that make sense? All right, so our next one is, so we've got F. Now we can we're back into stepwise motion, although we have to set ourselves up for this ending right here. So you got to always keep that in mind. In fact, whenever I work on these, I always plunk in the ending first because it's usually something that you just like template, throw it in, there aren't any other options. So put that in first so that you know exactly what you're working with. And good thing, we're actually not that far away from B, so it shouldn't be too hard to work. So our next beat, we want this to be dissonant, this to be consonant. So let's try, let's see, so our consonant options are A, we could do C or D. So why don't we go up to C? Can we do that? Nope, it's a fifth. That's too many in a row. Actually, no, you can probably get away with it. There's one in between. Nope, actually, nope, can't. It's a leap. That's why. All right, so let's stick with, let's see, A, C, D. Let's jump up to D. So here we go, we've got sixth, all right, and then step down. So this is going to be also D to E, so this is going to step down to seventh. So this is a nice suspension right here. And then, hopefully, this will work out really, really well. So from E to C is a sixth, so we can do C, C for a nice 6-7 suspension right here. Perfect. And that leads us right into 6-7, and then finally resolving on the octave. So this is fourth species counterpoint. It's actually kind of a fun one, and I recommend when you're done, take these guys and on a piano and play them out, see if they sound right. I think you'll be pretty impressed with what you come up with. They're fun. So that is fourth species counterpoint. Now finally, last but not least, we have fifth species counterpoint or florid counterpoint, which is sort of an anything goes situation. I mean, obviously there are tons of rules, but as far as what you can put in the counterpoint part, you can use all of the previous counterpoints and mix them and match them. So it's kind of fun. Okay, so fifth species counterpoint, otherwise known as florid counterpoint, because it's flowery, there's a lot of rhythmic variety, has a lot of rules to follow. Most of them have to do with how to use the different species counterpoint together. So first of all, the exercise should begin in second or fourth species, and usually with a half note rest, all right? So it's usually going to start with a half note rest, and then either with a half note suspended to another half note or just a single half note. You're going to always conclude the counterpoint with fourth species. So the same ending as you did for your fourth species counterpoint, just plug it right in. Let's see. Use second, third, and fourth species to fill in the rest of the notes. So second or fourth species at the beginning, the middle can be second, third, or fourth species, and then the end has to be fourth species. Don't use first species. The only time you use first species, is the very, very, very last note, all right? So that's going to be, you know, the whole note ending. And that's just in the counterpoint part, right? Or the cantus firmus, because we end in fourth species. Yeah? All right. So the other rule is don't stay in one species for more than 2.5 measures. If you just do like 5 measures of second species, it's going to get really boring. So mix it up. Second species, the half note, when you're using second species, it should always appear on the first beat, all right? Never use it on the second beat so that you've got like a quarter, half note, quarter, which creates syncopation, so you want to avoid that. If you do want some sort of syncopation, like suspensions, you have to use it in the third beat, all right? And when you use it in the third and fourth beat, it has to tie to another note. So it has to tie to either another half note, like in fourth species, or it can tie to a quarter note and be, you know, third species, but tied into it. But it's going to be on the third beat and never ever on the second beat. All right? Ideally, it's going to be on the first beat though. So also dealing with ties, no ties unless the first note of the tie is a half note. All right? So you can't tie a quarter note to a half note. You can only tie a half note to something else. Let's see. No isolated pairs of quarter notes when a half note could be used. So if you're in second species counterpoint, make it clear that you're in second species counterpoint. So don't just have like a measure of 2 half notes and then a measure of 2 quarter notes followed by a half note. It's got to be like 4 quarter notes or just use 2 half notes. Does that make sense? Let's see. Eighth notes are permissible, but there are a few rules that we have to use for eighth notes. You're going to use them sparingly, and they're always going to be in pairs, so you can't have just a single eighth note. And eighth notes must be approached and left by a step. So they're always going to be, you know, approached by a step and left by a step, all right? So you can't have a leap to or from any eighth notes, all right? Now, we've got even more rules, and I put some more of them on the board down here. Oh, over here, sorry. All right, so our other rules are, number 10, eighth notes can appear only as lower neighbor tones, all right? So when you've got those eighth notes in there, they can only be lower neighbor tones, not upper neighbor tones. They can also be passing tones. So, and then the other thing is when we're dealing with suspensions, they are often embellished, and this is when we want to see example 8.4, and I'm going to play a couple of them for you so you can see what the different embellishments are. So in 8.54, if you look right there, you can see them written out. So the first one, the resolution pitch, of a suspension may be anticipated by a quarter note. All right, so here's A. All right, so you can have this suspension of, all right, so you can anticipate it with a quarter note. In B, right here, the dissonant pitch of the suspension may be embellished with a quarter note escape tone type figure. So here is B. So you hear the escape tone, so you can do that. And then for C, a quarter note consonant leap to a consonant interval may follow the dissonant pitch. So in this case, you can have your suspension, and then you can do a leap as long as it's consonant. So it's a 3 to 6. So, oops, sorry. All right, so you got this leap down. All right, and then finally, last but not least, you can use double eighth notes to anticipate the resolution if the second eighth note is a lower neighbor tone. So only if it's lower neighbor tone. So you have like that. So these are just some little embellishments, and I can play them for you so you you can hear what they actually sound like on with the cantus firmus involved as well. So let's see. So here's A. So this is the resolution pitch of a suspension may be anticipated by a quarter note. So you have all right. So you have all right. So here's the resolution. Suspension, that nasty seventh. All right. And this is when you're going to see that quarter note, so a half note tied over to a quarter note, and then you have an anticipation. In B, again, the dissonant pitch of the suspension may be embellished with a quarter note escape tone type figure, all right? So here's our escape tone. So we've got, all right? That's what that one sounds like. A quarter note consonant leap to a consonant interval may follow the dissonant pitch. So this is C if you're looking in your book. So it's going to go. All right. So it just kind of jumps down and back up. And then finally, last but not least, the double eighth note may be used to anticipate the resolution if the second eighth is a lower neighbor tone. So you've got so the resolution is this C. All right, so it's this lower neighbor tone, C, B, C. So that's the rules for suspensions, and those are all the rules. So again, let's work 8.7 and see what happens. All right, so let's work florid counterpoint. So as we said, the exercise should begin in second or fourth species counterpoint. So generally, it's going to start with a half note rest in florid counterpoint, and then something else. Now, obviously, all these other rules apply. So it's got to start in a perfect consonant, so a first, fifth, or octave, right? So let's use some of the other stuff we did already. So we'll try an octave, and let's start in fourth species, all right? So we'll tie over, and then we can actually get away with using fourth species again. So let's do it. So here's our 7, 6, 5. All right, so now we've had 2 measures. So we should really try and do something else. So why don't we try and add one of these little suspension thingies to get us out of this suspension. All right? So maybe instead of tying to a half note, let's tie to a quarter note. How exotic. And then we'll anticipate our next, so it's got to resolve down somehow. So it's going to resolve down to A.